Boards and booze, booze and boards, drinks and beers, fight some hordes. Drank too much, forgot our swords, ran back home, filled our gourds, got drunk again, sang some chords. Boards and booze and boards, with Mickey and Jeb. Hello everyone, this is Booze and Boards with Mickey and Jeb. He's Mickey, I'm Jeb. That is the correct answer because he is Mickey and I'm Jeb. This is episode 5. We've gone this far. Wow, that's a surprise.
Yeah.
And we're doing what this time, Mickey?
Dead of Winter.
Oh my gosh, I've heard so much about this game.
A crossroad game.
It's a crossroad.
By Isaac Vega and John
Gilmore.
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 Flat Hat Games.
Yep.
You've probably heard about it. And
I'm pretty sure you've heard about it.
And if you're watching this video, you probably bought it because you've heard a lot of good things about it.
And if you haven't bought it, then you can watch the video and see if you like it. So,
exactly. Hey,
that's what the point of our videos are for, right?
Exactly.
So, Dead of Winter. The point of it is that everybody is a survivor in the apocalypse, like a winter apocalypse type thing, and there's zombies that are coming and attacking you and
Okay.
And actually, one of the cool things is that there is a chance that somebody in the colony is a betrayer.
That's correct.
And that can add a lot of drama to the game. So I guess what the goal is to complete the objective of the game as well as your secret objective.
Yep. That's a pretty good description. The game is we are in the zombie apocalypse, like Jeb said, and you are in a colony. It is the middle of winter, hence Dead of Winter. So it's a survival game. I hate to call this a zombie game because just because zombies are in it, it's really a survival game. It just happens to be that zombies is the antagonist of the game. Exactly.
It could have been what, like
could have
crazy
been
zombie cars, or well, they're zombies, but whatever.
It could have been mutants. It could have been crazy people. It could have been a lot of different things. The point is, I think both of our opinions, at its roots, it's a survival game. It's a co-op survival game for.
It's actually
what does it play?
2 to 5.
2 to 5. I think 2 you need some modifications.
Yeah,
after that, it plays pretty straightforward.
Yep. I don't know. Other than that, I think it's just gameplay, right?
Yeah, I think so. So. We'll come back in a minute and we'll show you the setup of the game.
Some rules of how to play it, and then we'll actually have the gameplay itself.
Alright.
With some new guests, actually.
Yeah, new guests. A couple of new guests that haven't been on here before. You won't see their faces, but that's alright.
Yeah, you'll hear them and see what insults they have for Jeb. So.
Yeah.
Alright. So we'll get to the setup right now. First thing we should say is that the objective of the game is that we're a colony of survivors trying to survive. Each player has to complete their secret objective as well as the colony objective in order to win before the game ends. That's just a quick object of the game. So to begin the setup of Dead of Winter, the first thing you want to do is place the colony board and the 6 location cards. As you can see, this is the colony board. It says the colony up here. And then right now we just have 3 locations. For example, there's 6 of them, but that's all we're going to fit for our needs right now. After you get all of that set up, players each get a reference sheet. The reference sheet looks like this and contains the round summary, which has the order of play for everyone. So the player's turns, or the player turn phase, and then what happens then the colony phase and everything that happens in that order. So this is kind of like a little cheat sheet as well as a reminder of everything. It also has what the players can do for their turn actions. So there's actions that require die and then actions that don't. There is a spot that says where you should put your group leader and where you should put your followers below. There's a little unused action dice pool, and here's the used action dice pool. And right here is the secret objective. And if you look, there is a little thing that says, remember to draw your crossroad cards at the beginning of the turn.
So the next thing you do during setup is you are going to decide on a main objective. You can do this in a multiple of ways. It has a suggestion if the first time you've played. There's a suggestion in the book on which one to play. Other than that, you have cards that look like this. Okay, these are the main objective cards. They're laid out really nice. They tell you exactly what to set up. They give you the victory condition. And they also have at the bottom whether the game time will be a short game, a medium game, or a long game. So you could decide to just totally do a randomized thing. You could take out all the short ones and randomize just the short ones. Take out all the long ones, just randomize those and do long. So you know you're going to get a long game, whatever. What's also really cool is that if you flip these over, you have, whoops, yeah. Anyways, I think I had it on the wrong side to start. A more difficult scenario. So you have a hard scenario and an easier scenario. That's why they're double-sided, which gives you a lot more replayability in the game.
And actually, on the main objective card, it has the setup for where the morale starts and the round tracker starts.
You get 2 tokens. They're colored. The round one is red, and that would go depending on what the setup told you, and then the blue one goes on where the morale. And then you're going to slide those as situations occur. The next part is to take the secret objectives.
First, you start with the non-betrayal secret objectives.
Right. These are your objective cards. Down here, if you can see that, there's numerous cards that say betrayer. So you take all those out, and then you're left with all the ones that don't have that. We're going to shuffle up these, and we're going to deal 2 for each player in the game. Let's say we're playing a 4-player game. So I would have 4 of those out. I'd shuffle up the betrayer cards, add 1, make sure you don't look at anything that's not in there, and then shuffle these up, deal 1 to each person. So as you can see, you may or may not have a betrayer in the game.
The next part of setup is to shuffle the crisis cards and place them on the colony board. This is what the back of the crisis card looks like, and that's the, actually, I don't know. I say these are backs, these are fronts, but whatever. You'll shuffle them, and on the colony board, there is a spot that matches the back, and it's for the crisis cards.
So one thing kind of important to note, I know you're just thinking setup here right now, but once you've played the game a few times, it's kind of interesting that you do get your secret objective before everything else sets up, because in just a second you're going to get your characters. And once you've played the game a few times, you're going to want to try to pick characters that'll help you complete your objectives better. Probably the first few times you won't care. You're just going to, oh, this guy looks really cool, I'm going to take him.
I want to be the ninja.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so after you place the crisis cards, you will shuffle the decks for the players, the exiled objectives, and the crossroad cards. So those are 3 different decks, and the player cards are what Mickey's showing you right now.
These are the players.
So you'll shuffle them up and make a deck out of them. This is the crossroad card deck, and you'd shuffle that as well. On the crossroad cards, in the bottom right corner, there is a little symbol that tells whether or not this card is suitable for
mature themes.
Yeah. Before you do that, you might want to take them out. You might not, whatever. You'll just shuffle that deck and set it to the side. It
is a nice feature if you want to play with younger kids, because most of the stuff that I've read in it, I wouldn't say it's like really over the top, but there are themes that are probably not appropriate for younger kids. So if you take a few out and read them, you'd probably realize what I'm talking about. And like I said, it's easy enough to take them right out. The last deck to shuffle up is these exiled ones. These will only come into play is if you boot somebody out of the game. They look like this on the other side. What's kind of cool about is if you get exiled, you still get to play the game. and it just tells you on the top, if you're not the betrayer, this is how you play the game, and then on the bottom it says, if you are the betrayer, this is how you finish out the game. So even if you get booted out, you still get to play the game, and it's really kind of cool that way. These would just go off to the side also, along with
Crossroads and the
players. And the players. You also have a deck of starter items. They all say starter item at the bottom. So those get shuffled up, and each player receives 5, I believe.
Yep, 5.
And then any of the starter items that aren't used are out of the game.
After everybody gets their starter items, you will make the item decks for each location. So each of these locations have a number in the top left, and they have a name. So what you'll do is look through all the item cards and separate them.
They'll be separate. You're gonna put them back in order at the end of the game. And it's not frequently do they get shuffled in anyways. It basically happens if somebody dies at a location.
All their
gear gets shuffled in. It happens sometimes, not often, and it's very easy to pick out the cards. So I'll give you an example here. This is the police station set. You can see 01 police station. Like again, Jeb and I are just using these for example. They're out of order, but this is police station right here. So you would shuffle those up and just place them on there. And you would do the same thing for this one happens to be the school. Put all the school cards there. This is the gas station. You put all the gas stations there.
Yep, so you just do that for each of the locations. And then after that, you will deal the survivor cards.
Right. So supposedly you already shuffled these up, so I think.
Yeah.
And then each player gets 4. So if it was a 4-player game, you go around, you do 4. You get to look at them. Is the characters, and you pick 2 of them, and then the other ones go back into the deck, and the deck gets reshuffled. Let's say I grabbed Alexis Gray, librarian, and Sophie Robinson, the pilot. Then I would search in the box for... No, don't say that yet.
I was just going to say you make one a leader and one a follower.
Oh, okay. Well, but I would do it the other order, because Jeb wants to do it this order. I would go find my figures first, and then you would decide on one of these cards to be the leader of your group, which goes on that side of the card. Anybody else that you have in your group goes down there.
And here's the cardboard cutout of whoever. I know Mickey chose one of them. So you would take that cardboard person and put it in the colony. And everybody would do that, so there's 2 times the number of players in the colony.
Quick note on choosing your leader. It can be any card. A lot of times I think people tend to lean towards, oh, wait a second, that person has the higher value on them. What do they call that value?
Card.
Influence. It's the influence of the person. So there's like a hierarchy in the colony. So each character has an influence number. People tend to be like, oh, that's got the higher influence, I have to put that as a leader. That's not true. You can put either card as your leader. The influence number does come into play in terms of who goes first, and also what happens when things die because of infections or whatever else. So that's what you need to know about the influence number. Okay, so the last thing, just so that another board overview real quick, is each of these round circles is a place for either a survivor or a helpless survivor, which are represented by tokens here. During the game, you may get a helpless survivor. They count towards the number of survivors in your colony. What they represent, though, is the very young or the very old that are part of the colony, but they really can't do anything in terms of helping out. So they're kind of like, oh, I still have to feed this person because, you know, we've not all gone insane yet, so we actually care about these people. All right. Of course, you might get frustrated and not care about them while you're playing the game, I'll tell you.
All right. So for the colony, there's the colony. This is the nice picture of the colony. As I said before, the rounds and the morale tracks. The main objective would be placed here. This is the waste pile for when cards are played. It's kind of like the discard pile. So all those cards would go here. Here's the crisis cards. And then the cards that will be contributed to the crisis will go face down here. As for the actual colony itself, as Mickey said, this is where all of the colonists will be. These circles with toxic symbols represent places where zombies will be placed. And at the colony, there's 6 different entrances. So that's just kind of the...
And they're numbered because that makes a difference when we start placing them.
Yep. And then the final thing is the food supply has this little area here where you would put food tokens when somebody plays a food card. So that's what one would
like that. And if you get into a situation where you're starving,
starvation tokens, which is just an empty food can, those would be placed in there as well. So that's the colony itself.
And in terms of locations, you already saw where we put the item decks there. They also have the hazard symbols where you would place zombies when they spawn. They also have circles for how many survivors can stand at the location. Notice that this one has 2, this has 3, and this has 4. So you can't put any more players on a location than there are spaces to put them. And if the zombies come out and there's too many, then the spot gets overrun. Same with the colony.
Also for the locations, we have the item decks for each one, which we talked about earlier. These are noise token, I guess where you place noise tokens. So there's 4 spots for each place, which means you can only do a maximum, or you can only put a maximum of 4 on there. And then you can't do any more noise. And then the other final thing for each location is that next to the name in the top right, it has pictures of items. So, for example, the school has a food can, a book, I guess that's the junk symbol, medicine, and people. So the item that's furthest to the left is the more frequent item within that item deck. So if you go to the school, the odds of getting a food is a lot better than finding a person. So each of the places have different, I guess, odds of... Yeah. So the gas station, obviously, you have a better chance of finding gas. So each of those location has that, and that's it for locations.
Also, what you'll get during setup is your initial die. The way the die work in the game, and everybody will have the same amount to start, but what the rule book says is that at the start of your turn, you take 1 die plus the number of survivors that you control. So everybody controls 2 at the beginning of the game, so everybody's going to have 3 dice to start the game with.
And finally, before you actually start the game, you want to look for the player with the leader with the highest influence. So if Mickey has the pilot girl with a 58, and I have the park ranger with a 32, and say our third player has the lawyer, well, Mickey's pilot has a 58 influence, and these 2 people have 38, 32. So the highest person is going to become the first player of the game.
Remember, this has to be in your leader spot.
In the leader spot.
If you have the highest number in your follower spot, that doesn't count.
And the first player token
is a knife.
And I actually think it says first player, which I didn't know about until someone pointed out.
Once you've done all the setup that we just described, and everybody has their characters and their dice, and you're ready, and everybody understands what the objective is to the game, the first thing you're going to do is reveal the crisis under player turns, because that's what the players start first. So what that means is these are the crisis cards. So you just pick up the top card, and you reveal this card, and this one happens to say Blizzard, and underneath Blizzard it says we need fuel equal to the number of non-exiled players. So remember, if somebody gets exiled, then they wouldn't count towards this objective anymore. But it'll be a few rounds probably before you kick somebody out, unless you're just mean. It also says if you fail, the non-exiled survivors cannot move until the end of the next round, and you lose a morale. So what that means is that's what happens if you fail. So, Mickey, how do you win? Well, you need a number of fuels in this spot equal to the number of exiled players. So if we have a 4-player game, which is the example we've been using, that means during the game, cards that you own, either starter cards or in here. Let's see. Oh, look, there's a fuel tank. So if you have a fuel tank in your hand, on your turn, you can place it face down there. Why face down? Because there could be a betrayer, and this is kind of like a secret game, and you also have a secret objective. So what's going to happen is, at some point we're going to check those, and then we'll reveal if we got it right or not. But, important thing to note, you can put as many cards in there as you want, and they don't have to be correct, and you'll understand that as you play the game.
Alright, so the next step is to roll the action dice. So at the same time, every player is going to roll their 3 action dice and put them all in the unused action dice pool. So that's a pretty simple step. Everyone does it simultaneously. So after that is...
We start the main phase of the game, or for the players anyways. So, during the player turns, you have actions that require one of these die, and you also have actions that don't require a die. So, the first action that you can take would be an attack action. Okay? So, we are going to use the pilot as the example. This is her attack stat, where the little burst has a +4. So basically that means I need a die with a 4 or more, and this is how an attack works. Let's say there is a zombie at any spot in the colony, doesn't matter where he is, and I'm in the colony. I would take a dice with 4, move it over to my used, he gets blown up instantly. I take the exposure die, I roll it, see what happens. In this case, I got hit with a wound, so I would put a wound on my card. And that's how you do an attack action. It's the same if my person is standing over here, and there's a zombie here. I just do the same thing. I move a die with a 4 over to the used pile. The zombie automatically dies. I roll for exposure. Of course, there's things throughout the game that might, eliminate rolling for exposure or whatever.
Yep. Let's say she's still at the police station and she wants to search. So searching is an action you can do that requires a die. So on her card she needs a 1 or higher, and there's a little magnifying glass that symbolizes searching. So if she has a die in her unused dice pool at a 1 or higher, she can spend it. So she's got 2 2s, so let's put one of the 2s into the spent action dice, and that allows her to search the item deck at the location she's at. So to search, she would just draw 1 card and look at it. So, oh, it's a gun. Say I did not want a gun though. What would I do, Mickey? I would make some noise, right?
You would, because you're clanging around now.
Yeah,
looking further into the mess that you're into.
So if I wanted to, I could make noise, and what this does is allow me to draw another card.
Oh, we still got a gun.
More guns. Oh boy.
You don't want a gun, do you, Jim?
I don't want a gun, so let's make more noise. Alright, I will draw this. Oh boy.
That's what you were looking for.
I was looking for people. So I have now 3 cards in my hand. I have not revealed these to anyone. This is just showing showing you guys what to do. I've got 3 cards in my hand, and I've only performed a search. So what that means is I can only keep 1 out of the 3 cards. So I wanted the outsiders, so I will take these and put them in my hand, and the 2 guns that I did not want will go to the bottom of the item deck.
And then these making noise will come into play later on, that you'll see.
And some players have abilities that let them draw, like say she drew 1 card to search, that she might have an ability that lets her draw an extra one, like just looking to draw. There's some people that actually says you get to draw an extra and keep an extra. Yeah.
So don't forget to know we're not going to go over every single player's ability, but just remember at the bottom of the card, all the characters can do something. The pilot that we've been using through most of the example says anywhere, once per round, you may look at the top card of a single location's item deck. After you have looked at that card, place it back on the top of that item deck. So basically, the theme is she's a pilot. She's probably circled around and can see what's at the top of something. Right. She's really good at looking. So, which is actually a really good ability because she can. It doesn't say she has to be at the location; just says she gets to look at the top of the one, see something she likes, and then she can move on her turn over to that spot.
Yep. So that's pretty much searching.
Right. So let's talk about barricade. So barricade, you don't need any particular number on your die. You just need to spend it. So it doesn't matter what number is on the die. You take an unused action die and you move it over to the used spot, and then you can take a barricade token and you can put that on one of the hazard markers on the location that you are at. So she's at the police station, she puts a barricade. If she was over in the colony, she can put it on any of the spots that are open. So we're going to leave that barricade there for now.
Next is cleaning waste. So if she happened to be at the colony and some people had played some cards or lost them or whatever, and they were in the trash can at the colony, she could spend a die, taking any number on the die and putting it in her spent action pool, and she's able to clean waste. So what that means is she gets to take the waste pile and she takes the top 3 cards of it. You can't choose any cards, it has to be the top 3.
For you game sharks out there, we know that wouldn't be in there.
Yeah. I'm just doing random stuff. So anyway, the top 3 cards of the waste pile are going to be removed from the game. They're not put in any decks or anything, they're just out of the game completely. So that is cleaning waste.
It's important to clean waste because we'll go over it probably again later on, but if you're at 10 or more cards, you're going to get penalized when it's the colony's turn. So the next thing you can do is, by spending a die, is that you can attract zombies. So yes, you can literally pull zombies from any of the locations, 2 of them, and bring them to where you're standing. So basically, it's if somebody's getting swarmed, you can take a attract action and move them.
So for example, we have a survivor over at the police station, and there's 3 zombies there. She's not going to be able to handle them. And our pilot, whose turn it is like, let's save her. So what would she do, Mickey?
She would use the attract action, and she would take a unused die, move it, and call 2 of them over to the colony.
Yep. And
it does say any empty locations, so as long as the spot is not barricaded, you can put them there.
Yep. Alright, so let's move on to the actions that do not require dice. So the first one is to play a card. So remember the outsiders that were in my hand? Well, I can actually play them on my turn without having to spend a die to do that. So it could be a food card, a weapon that attaches to a survivor, could be a junk card, anything that you play, you just play it without having to pay a cost. Every card will go into the waste pile except these outsider cards. When they're played, they get removed from the game. Alright, for example, the food card, if I played a food card, it says waste pile, so I put this card into the waste pile, and it says add 1 food token to the food supply. So I would just take 1 and put it into the food supply. The next card is fuel. It says waste pile, so again it goes to the discard. Play this card when moving a survivor you control. Do not roll for exposure for that move. So we haven't gone over exposure yet, but fuel pretty much means she can move safely to any of the locations. So if I played fuel, she would go here and not have to worry about zombies or something biting her. Another card is a gun. This says equip. So it's a weapon, sorry. It goes to, instead of into the trash pile, it gets equipped to the survivor themselves. And it has an effect that you can use whenever it says you can. One card is a junk. It's a tool card. It says waste pile, so this goes to the waste pile. It says re-roll any unused action die that you control. So if I had this really bad 2 that I didn't like, I would just play that card and re-roll it.
To get another 2.
To get another
Good job,
2.
Jeb.
Another junk card, walkie-talkie. This one is actually an equip, so this 2 would be equipped to a survivor instead of going to the waste pile.
Great.
So that's a few of the different types of cards that can be played from your hand.
The important thing that you need to remember is that when playing the card, everything except the outsider is going to go into this pile here. That's how the waste starts building up. So the next thing you can do that does not require a die is to add a card to the crisis. I believe I went over that real quickly earlier, but our crisis again requires us to do fuel. So if I have a fuel card in my hand, or any card for that matter, you can contribute to the crisis by putting the card upside down over there so that nobody knows whose card it is when we reveal what happened. Yeah, so I believe most of the actions that don't require a die you can do multiple times. You can play a card multiple times.
The only one is move a survivor,
Right.
which is the next one.
Yep.
For moving a survivor, it's pretty easy. You take the survivor you want to move that you control, not someone else's. So I guess Mickey's the one controlling the pilot lady. So say he wanted to move her to the police station. So if he did that, he would move her, and as a...
Roll the exposure die.
Yep.
Oh, and it was cold outside.
Yep.
You got frostbite.
So this is the second time you've seen the exposure die, so let's quickly go over that. You only roll the exposure die when you attack a zombie or you move. There are cards and abilities that let you get around not having to roll it, but that's the default thing that you do.
And you might get a situation that forces you to roll it.
Yeah. So the different faces, there is a blank face, which means nothing happens, which is the best possible thing. There is a little, it looks like a skull mixed with a blood drop. That just means a wound. So if you roll this after moving, then your character takes a wound. The next one is a skull mixed with a snowflake, and that's frostbite. So the frostbite token would be placed on your survivor, and frostbite counts as a wound, and at the beginning of your turn, that survivor takes a wound. So frostbite's really bad, but when I say really bad, there's one really, really, really bad thing, and what is this called, Mickey?
A bite.
A bite. So if you roll the bite, then
You die.
you're just in trouble. You're dead. So
And the infection starts to spread.
Yep. So if I rolled the bite, my person would die, and oh no, there was a person with her, so it's Mickey's person. So Mickey has a choice. For the pilot, he could either kill her off, and that stops the infection, or he could roll the exposure die. He could roll the exposure die and chance her living or dying.
Right.
Once he rolls it, if he rolls a blank side, she lives. If he rolls a side with anything else on it, she dies, and it spreads again. So
there's a chain reaction if a bite happens. So as you can see, if it happened in this place, there was only 2. So I would probably take the chance and roll it and hope I didn't get anything. Problem arises when it happens someplace in the colony or at a location where there are multiple ones. Because then I have to make the choice, like Jeb said, of deciding, am I going to take the chance of her living, or am I going to roll and potentially kill myself and infect somebody else? So that's how that works. So Jeb said, just to reiterate, it's when you move and when you attack.
Yep.
The other thing you can do is spend food tokens. You don't see this happen often, but it is a nice mechanic, because if you really, really, really have to have something, or if you're the betrayer and just want to, mess people up and talk your way out of it, you could use this action. So what using the food token means is that I can spend a food token from the supply, it just gets rid of it, and I can take a die and I can increase its value by 1. So I've changed this 2 to a 3.
but Mickey, her attack ability is a 4, so you should probably just spend another food token, right?
Right, maybe
and
do that
boost
again.
That.
Okay, so as you can see, you can increase. But if you're 1 away from something, and it's going to be, let's say you have an ability that, kills 2 zombies, and you're 1 away from doing it, and they're going to overrun something. Might be a worthwhile thing spending the food to do that, especially if maybe you guys had a surplus in the food supply or whatever. There are situations, I don't know how often you're going to see it, because food is pretty precious, but it is an action you can take.
The next action you can do without a die is request So if I needed, say one of my characters was almost dead and I was like, I really need some medicine to heal, I could be like, anybody, do you have medicine that you could give me? And Mickey would look at his cards and he says, no, Jeb, I never give anything to you. So I'd look at someone else and I'd ask them for medicine and they'd be like, okay, Jeb, here's some medicine. So if I request a card and someone gives it to me, I have to immediately play it. So there's no trickery involved, like I really just wanted to snatch somebody's medicine. No, I would have to play the medicine on me. So if you request something and they give it to you, you take it and you play it immediately. So that's how requesting works.
Next thing you can do without an action die is you can hand off, which sounds very similar to request, but it's a little bit different. Handing off is when you have an equipped piece of equipment and you are in the same space as somebody else. Notice that you don't have to be in the same location for the request action. You do have to be in the same location for the handoff. So if my pilot was equipped with a gun and maybe I potentially have another gun in my hand, I could, or maybe somebody moved there, it's their turn, and they could benefit from having the gun that I'm going to equip. Lots of different reasons, but what it means is I can take an equipped item and put it on that other person that I'm sharing a space with. Doesn't go in their hand, it immediately gets equipped to them. So that's how you hand off.
Yep, so if my girl had some night vision goggles and I move her into Mickey's pilot's police station, I could be like, Mickey, I'm handing off these goggles to you.
And I have to put them on her right away.
And that's how that works. Pretty easy. The last thing you can do without an action dice
It's vote Jeb out.
is vote Jeb out. Even if he's not playing the game, you can vote him out. No, it's actually to vote to exile. So on your turn, if you have a really good suspicion somebody is the betrayer, you could call a vote to exile. And what that means is everybody will put their hand out with their thumb to the side. You don't have to do it exactly like this. And at the count of 3, you would go 1, 2, 3. Up would mean yes to exile them. Down would be not to, or however you guys want to play it. Just make sure everybody knows what each thumbs up or down means. But the goal is you want to vote someone out. Everybody will vote. And then the result of that vote means that person is exiled or not.
But Jeb, what happens if there's a tie?
If there is a tie, then the first player is the tiebreaker.
So, yeah, and actually voting works the same way if there's any other cards that you vote for. You just do thumbs up or thumbs down. Another important thing on the actions to remember is that when it is your turn, the player to the right is the one that draws the crossroad card. Jeb can quickly explain the crossroad card again, since we're down at the bottom of that.
So on a crossroad card, one of these will be drawn every turn by the player to your right. It says the title of the crossroad card. Not too important, it's flavor. One key thing, though, is that usually the first few words are in italics. And that is the condition for when the crossroad card will go off. So if I draw this I'm to the right of Mickey, I draw this, and it's his turn, I would just read the first everything in italics, and then I'd know when this card would go off. If that condition's ever met, then I would be like, hold on, Mickey, crossroad card time. And then I could read all this if people care about the story. I like reading it.
That makes the game fun. You should read the story.
And then there are 2 options. And usually it comes down to either the group voting or Mickey, since it's his turn, he would have to decide something. And usually you would just read everything. So I would say option 1, you choose to do this, and here's the result. Option 2, you do this, here's the result. And then he would choose what he wants to do. Some people like to play it where they don't know what happens. And I've never played it like that, so I can't say if that's fun or not. It's up to you.
A lot of people wanted it to be like that. They thought it was more thematic to not, like, here's the option, this is what you can do, with not giving you the result, and here's option 2, this is what you can do, don't give the result, and then make you pick. The rules literally say you read the whole card. I will say that the app that they just came out with does it the opposite. It doesn't reveal everything that you can do until you want it to, like tapping through it. So you can even make the game more suspenseful if you do that.
Yep. And then the final thing with Crossroads cards is if this is the deck and this is the one I have in my hand, and Mickey ends his turn and this condition's never met, I would take the Crossroads card and put it at the bottom. Ooh, I missed that. How did I do that? So I put it on the bottom, and then the next person would draw the card.
Right. And don't forget, it's at any point. We can't stress that enough. It's not at the beginning of the turn if the condition's met. There's a lot of things, like you'd be surprised, even some of them says if the player controls such and such. Well, if you look over there at the beginning of the turn and they don't have that person, don't throw it away yet, because there is a chance they could get a different survivor or something like that. So just keep in mind on exactly what the condition is and pay attention. The crossroad cards actually help keep you engaged in the game also. Okay, so that's how the player actions work. It's right on your card, so you don't have to remember everything that I said, except you want to keep in the back of your mind how all that works. And again, you got a nice little cheat sheet. Before I get into the colony phase, though, real quick, I just want to mention that the main objective cards have a code, I'll call it, that you can go to in the back of the rule book so that you can get some flavor text on what's happening to you. It's kind of cool. It's a little story. I didn't mention it when we were setting up because but it does lend itself if you want to get into the game. I mean, this is supposed to be a semi-role-playing game too, so it's fun. Okay, so anyways, off to the colony phase. So the first thing in the colony phase is you have to pay for food. So we are going to throw some survivors into the colony, and let's throw a couple of these guys in there too, just for giggles. And then we are going to talk about the way that you pay for food. So you pay for food by counting up the number of survivors in the colony only. Anybody that's outside the colony doesn't count. You count 1 food per 2 people. So right now we have 2. Yes, the helpless survivors count. So there's 1 food, 2 food, 3 food. Oh, we only have 2 food. What happens if we only have 2 food? Well, we have to put a starvation token in, and morale moves down. Okay? But let's say these guys weren't in here. Now I only need 2 food. 1 food for those 2, 1 food for those 2. We discard these food tokens, and we're good to go for food for that round. That's how you pay for food.
One thing to note is that in that case where we did not have enough food, you would add the starvation, but you would actually not remove any food tokens.
Oh, yes, that's true. I didn't take them off when I did that, though, did I?
You didn't, but I just wanted to point that out to everyone.
Because the food carries over, but the starvation thing is bad.
Yeah. Alright, so after you check for food, the next thing to do is check the waste. So I will grab this waste pile, and I will count 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 4 cards. If there are 10 or more, then that is really bad, and morale would go down 1. But since there were less than 10, morale stays the same, everybody's happy, and we move on to the next thing to check.
And it is per 10.
Yep.
So you'd have to get quite a few to get it again. But that happens every single round, so if you leave it at 10, you're going to go down on morale each turn. So keep that in mind, because if you get to 0 on either of the tracks, which I don't even know if we said that, but if you do get to 0 on either of the tracks, game over.
After you check the waste,
we resolve the crisis. Okay. So, again, this was the crisis. This is the crisis pile. So
things are looking bad.
Yeah, things are looking bad. But let's, we had a 4-player game. Alright, so during the game, 4 people threw in cards. So I'm going to shuffle them up so nobody knows whose card's who. And then I'm going to reveal these cards to everybody. So we have a fuel.
That's what we're looking for.
Oh, a food. We're not looking for that. And a fuel. And a fuel. Okay. So, somebody did an uh-oh. But the way that this works is that you count up the good ones, and they're each worth +1. And you count up the bad ones, and they're worth -1. So I have 3. I have a bad one, that's -1, so only hit 2. So that means I have a 2, and the number of players with 4, I failed. Now, if this had been a fuel, I would have had a +4, and I would have succeeded. If, however, there was 5 cards in here, and let's pretend I had another fuel over here, pretend I had 4 fuels and this, I would still lose because 4 minus 1 is 3. So remember that this is not straight up, did you have enough in here? It is a point system. So each of these is a good point. Everything that's not a fuel is a bad point. That's how you resolve the crisis.
All right.
And then these get removed from
as well as the crisis card.
Right.
It gets removed from the game as well.
You can put this on the bottom of the deck. You'll probably never go through them all, but
yeah.
Or that's what we usually do. So, but Jeb's right. It's removed from the game.
All right. After resolving the crisis, you will add zombies. So let's move this person here and see what happens. So when we add zombies, first we will look at the colony occupants. So right now we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So like food, it's for every 2 we'll add a zombie. So for these 2, we will add 1 zombie. For these 2, we will add 1 zombie. And notice that instead of placing it in the 1 entrance again, I will add it to the 2nd entrance. And then this guy, since we round up for it, we will add another zombie for him. So when you're placing zombies in the colony, you will always place, say if I had 7, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th would start at 1 again. So it's always going like that. If there's 3 here, and then for some reason we're spawning now, I would then I'd start here again, and then here, and then here. So that's how spawning at the colony works.
Always.
Always.
So, like, if something during the game made you spawn something at the colony, you would do it exactly the same way. You have to put it in the order that Jeb just showed you. The only exception to be with that would be to attract, because the attract command says you get to place it in an empty space.
Yep. Once you have the zombies in the colony, you will now look at each of your locations, and for locations with survivors, you would place a zombie for each one. So since there's 1 person here, I'll place 1 zombie there. Next, I will check the noise, and that's where noise comes in play. Since this one's used, what I do is for every noise token, I will roll a 6-sided die, and on a result of 3 or less, a zombie's going to spawn. So let's see what happens. For the first noise token, 4. I'm good. I can remove this. Next one, 1. Of course, yeah, we'll get a 1. So I will place a zombie there. So always remember that if there are noise tokens, you'll have to roll dice to spawn. And since we're at the police station with the barricade, let's say for some reason 2 more zombies are spawned at the police station. So
let's just say we rolled a whole bunch of pluses on more noise, but we're just pretending now. Yep. But we're going to place more zombies.
So I would place the 3rd one here, and then the 4th one I would place there, but there's a barricade, and the barricade kills a zombie that would be placed on it.
Right.
And then one thing to remember is if that was a barricade here and that space was empty, I would not place it right on the barricade. I always have to fill empty spaces before placing on a barricade. You would do that for every location, and after that, all the zombies would have been spawned.
After we add all the zombies, we check the main objective to see what it says. I don't remember which one we picked, but they're all different, so it'll be pretty self-explanatory on what the objective is. So you just read it. If you've met the requirement, then you win the game. Also, which I don't think we mentioned, don't forget you do have your secret objective. A lot of the objectives, if not all, say that the main objective has to be completed, and then you have a secret objective for yourself, if you want to show that, Jeb, down at the bottom. And if that is also completed personally, then you win the game. So most of the time you're going to have to complete that one, but to win the game, you have to have your own objective completed.
All right. So once you have checked your checked for the main objective, if the game is not over, you will move the round tracker. So right now it's at 6, so I would just move it down 1 round, and that's the moving round tracker phase. It's really easy. After that, what do you do, Mickey?
After that, we pass the first player token to the right. Don't forget that this game passes the first player to the right. It's a big difference than most games. Most of the time you go clockwise. This goes counterclockwise for the first player token, but gameplay is normal in a clockwise order. That almost wraps it up. I think only one of the neat things is when Jeb was talking about being exiled. If you get exiled from the game, you randomly get one of these exile cards that we showed you earlier that we shuffled up, and on the back of that, you're going to have a new theme, objective,
yeah,
whatever you want to call it. But it's really cool because it gives you 2 options. One if you were the betrayer, and one if you aren't the betrayer. So you still can win the game as being exiled from the colony. So you're an outsider, but you can still win the game, which is really cool.
And another thing for being exiled is when you are exiled, you cannot, there's a few things you can't do. So the first thing is that all of your survivors in the colony would leave, so you would have to move them to the locations outside. After that, you're not allowed to add cards to the crisis. Any helpless survivors that you would add through cards, they would not be added. You cannot spend the food tokens to increase your die, but you can play a food card from your hand to increase the die. You cannot vote for any more exile votes, and morale does not lower when any of your exiled survivors die. And the final thing is played cards that you play from your hand do not go to the waste pile. So you're pretty much not contributing to the colony at all. And finally, if there are 2 exiled players and neither of them are the betrayer, then morale drops to 0. And then finally, after that, I think the last thing that we need to talk about is how the game actually ends. We saved that for last because that's how the game ends. The first thing is if the morale track ever goes to 0. So in any situation, if that hits 0, game over. What's another?
If you run out of rounds.
So if the round marker hits 0, you're done. The phase where you check the main objective, if the main objective is completed, the game is over, and everybody needs to check their secret objectives to see if they met all the requirements. If they met everything, then they win. If you met some and didn't meet the others, you lose. And then usually the betrayer, most of the time they're trying to destroy the colony, so betrayers usually lose if other survivors win, but it's all situational on what your cards say. That's it for setup and gameplay of Dead of Winter. If you'll join us, we're going to play a 5-player game of Dead of Winter.
And hopefully that'll cover anything that you guys maybe didn't understand. But if you don't want to watch the gameplay, feel free to leave questions. We always like to answer your questions.
Yep.